a mum who's sent me a message that she's got a 3-year-old who is currently eating her own meals, and the major issues that they're having is that she's had limited texture exploration due to some delays as she was a child, and she's gotten now used to eating her own meals, and what can she do about that? So she has specific foods she'll eat, like chicken nuggets, peas, etc., but refuses unfamiliar foods. Okay, so even within that, like you said, etc., but I'm interested in the whole list of foods that she'll eat, because like when we start working together, I ask you for an extensive list of what foods is your child currently eating, what flavors, what dips, like all those sorts of things are really important, because then from there, when I can look at it, like the way that my brain works and the way like one of my superpowers with clients is being able to look at their list of foods and go, okay, we can branch out here, we can branch out here, we can add this. Or like if this is your goal food's over here, and there are some foods over here that would link really nicely to help us get to the goal foods. That's where my brain is like on fire. So knowing what those reliable foods are is really important. So even with what you've given me, chicken nuggets and peas, those in themselves are quite different in texture. The nuggets themselves can, like if you think about a chicken nugget, the outside and the inside look completely different. The color is different. The texture is different. It's crunchy on the outside. It's like a little bit, because it's breaded, it's got like a texture to it where it's a little bit crumbly, whereas the inside is kind of juicy and it requires chewing. So those are very different textures. And then peas, again, it depends how you've cooked them. I'm guessing the first thing I think of is like frozen peas. But even those can have differences in what the mouthfeel is, depending if they're really soft, or they might be a little bit crunchy not crunchy, but like they might have a pop on the outside. Some of them are wrinkly. So if she's eating those, even within that, there's some really good variety. I've had a really good question come in here. Am I causing myself trouble in the future if I'm not having introduced 3 meals to my 12-month-old? Okay, so I do have an online course for babies. If your child's already 12 months old, you've kind of aged out of that. The course is Fuss-Free First Foods, and it's really to guide you through the first 12 months of your feeding journey. Ideally, by 12 months of age, your child is having 3 meals a day, and that's because at 12 months old, approximately around that time, your child needs to shift from getting their primary source of nutrition from milk to solid foods. Milk can still be part of that, but it should not be predominantly that. So the new client that I started with on the weekend that I was telling you about, he was drinking 30 ounces of milk in a day. That is more than double what is recommended, and that is knocking back his appetite to the point where he's not wanting to try foods because he just doesn't have an appetite. So that's a big problem. So I'm going to ask you back a question. What's preventing you from being able to have the 3 meals with your 12-month-old? Thank you so much for sharing the live. If you're finding this helpful, please send likes, please share. It's really helpful in this online space with the algorithm. Okay, so back to the child, the 3-year-old who's had like different textures. Yogurt, muffins, peanut butter, and jelly, bananas, blueberries are her most reliable foods. Okay, so even within that, that's a lot of different textures. The texture of yogurt is very different to like peanut butter texture. If she's eating peanut butter and jelly, does that mean in a sandwich? Is she also eating bread? What kind of bread? Because different kinds of bread have different textures. So are we talking like a whole wheat bread? Are we talking a white bread? Are we talking something like a sourdough bread? Because those textures are very different too. And ideally, if she's able to be flexible and have different kinds of bread or having it on a cracker, again, that's a lot of variability and flexibility, which is what we're looking for. Muffins have a very different texture again. Those can be quite crumbly. They can be kind of moist in the middle, a little bit drier on the outside. So even within that, there's a good amount of like bananas, blueberries, there's a good amount of different textures going on. And from what you told me earlier with like the chicken nuggets, she can do crunchy things. So I get that she's got a very limited amount of reliable foods. That's definitely something I would want to work on with you. But it sounds like she's actually got a really good variety of textures. So what I would suggest then, initially when you had said she's like very like limited and has had that problem with like with the delay and not having exposure to textures. Initially I was thinking, okay, then that seems kind of complex. He probably wouldn't be a good fit for the group. But based on what you've told me, everything you've said there is like, some of it is maybe different than what I guess the more traditional path of how a child ends up becoming a bit more selective. That's a little bit different, but it sounds like you're in a similar spot where a lot of my group clients would start. So I think actually the group program would be a good fit for you, because we'd be able to work on not only increasing her foods, because that can take more time. My main goals in the group are giving you the tools and strategies so that you can continue this journey over the long term successfully. Because when I say that my clients start seeing wins and progress in the first few weeks, it's not that their child is eating 10 new foods in 2 or 3 weeks. Like, that's not possible. And anyone who tells you that they can do that is fucking lying, because your child is on their own timeline. But what you can do is you can act like a catalyst to help your child by facilitating positive exposures and clear positive communication to facilitate like rich positive exposures to help your child want to try new foods. Whether your child eats the new food, they can try it. Oftentimes trying something they're not eating like a plate of it, but we can't get to them eating a plate of it if we haven't first helped them be more comfortable in handling it, looking at it, touching it, putting it up to their mouth and trying it. So those are the techniques and strategies that you need to implement over the long term. And that's why the small coaching group, ideally, that's what you can do that over the 8 weeks. You will see wins and progress. You'll see a lot of progress. A lot of it is because they're things that you are in control of and you can change. You can modify the way you talk to your children. You can modify how you expose your child to foods. You can change whether or not, thank you so much for sending the gifts and likes, really appreciate it. You can control whether or not you're bribing your child, whether or not you're pressuring them. Those are all things that you are in control of. So you have a lot of power here, even though in the end it's your child who has to be comfortable with trying the foods. Your mindset and the way you communicate is incredibly important to your child's success. And that's why I created the group, because one-on-one coaching is expensive and it also requires a lot more input from you and from me, where one-on-one coaching goes for 5 months, whereas the group program is kind of intense, that it goes for 8 weeks and we meet every week. So it's on a much faster trajectory. So you need to be in a place where you're like, yes, I'm ready to give me the tools. I'm ready to implement them and action them. That's where you'll have the most success as well. And ideally you're coming into this knowing, hey, things aren't going to be fixed after 8 weeks, but your stress levels will be much, much lower after the first few weeks. You will feel so much more confident in how to help your child be confident in trying or interacting with different foods. That's where you're going to see success in the long term. It's more, I'm in this for the long term for you. Because even if you have, like my oldest kid is 9 and she was a great eater, she still has moments where she doesn't want to eat certain foods. So even with a great eater, it's helpful to know, how do I manage something when my 9-year-old comes home and says, I don't like cucumbers anymore, or I don't want to eat oats anymore. So even a good eater, a quote good eater, goes through things as well. So if you have a child who is prone to be more selective, knowing how you're going to handle that and riding this wave as they grow up is really, really important. No worries, Chelsea. I hope to meet you if you booked a call. That would be great. Okay, so back to the question about the baby and the 3 meals. No interest in breakfast, lunch and dinner, eats well, no issues. Okay, so not interested in breakfast, then I would have a really nice, substantial and robust snack a little bit later in the morning and start with that. Just prefers milk in the mornings. I've tried lots of different breakfast options, no interest. Okay, so is your baby, are you giving her milk first thing in the morning? Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. You just said that she prefers milk in the mornings. So what if you don't give her the milk? Because this is a point where you shift from giving milk before food to giving food and not milk, or potentially milk with food, because now milk is considered a food rather than previously when your baby is, say, 6, 7, 8 months old, you give them milk and then they have a play and then you can do a food exposure or an introduction at that point. That's different. You're like now on the cusp of, now you give food first and not milk first. So that's kind of how I would suggest you start working on that. Melody says she likes Uncrustables, but or other white bread, nothing with seeds or crust. Interesting. Okay, so that would be something that we would be able to, that's something that I'd be able to work on as well. I've got a client at the moment whose child was only eating white bread, and we've moved him. He's tried sourdough. I think that's very crunchy, like it's quite crunchy and hard for him to chew. But they were successfully able to move to a whole wheat bread. It doesn't have seeds in it, because I know that that's also kind of a sticking point for some children. However, we would like to move towards a more nutritious kind of bread. So away from white bread onto like a wholemeal bread would be, again, one of my goals for you. And also just to help with, like, again, from a flexibility standpoint, that it's ideal. Sometimes you can't always get the same bread, and it would be great to be able to have them, you know, perhaps even have a cracker or something like that. And I'm talking a whole wheat cracker, not like a Jats cracker. Ideally, if we're looking to boost nutrition, that's an important part. Thank you so much for sending likes. If you're on Instagram and you have questions, feel free to pop the questions in as a comment. And if you're enjoying what we're talking about, please send hearts and likes. It's very helpful with the algorithm. Anonymous says, just to clarify, your group classes helps with how the parents addresses food towards with the child. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I think, are you asking, do I work directly with the parent? The answer is yes to that. Because it was actually interesting. I was having this conversation yesterday that you're the parent. You have a relationship with your child. In order for me as a professional to develop a relationship with your child and a rapport with your child is going to take a long time. You have the inbuilt system of being the mum or the dad, and you know your child, you have a rapport with them, they love you, they trust you. So if I can give you the tools to implement an action as if they're coming from I don't recommend parents tell their kids, I'm working with a dietitian to help you with your food. That's going to give them a fucking complex. We don't want that. I always say to parents, I want this to come as if it's coming from you. It's coming directly from you. You know what to do. Here are the things that you need to do. Don't ever tell your child that you're working with me. We don't want to give them a complex that mum and dad don't know what they're doing, or that your eating is such a problem that I need help. We don't want to do that. That's too much information for children. It can be a scary thing too, where a child's like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, and like that can feel out of control. So we don't want that. So yes, the group classes are to help you as the parent address how to help your child with food. That's what I meant. I get very stressed because my older child hardly eats meat and chicken. Okay, how old is your older child? And ideally, like, it's really great that you want to address that, because honestly, a lot of the families that I work with have multiple children, and they may join the group because one of their children in particular is more of the problem eater, but it's actually really helpful to have other kids in the house as well, because we can utilize the other child to help make food a little bit more accessible for the child that's struggling. You know, obviously I'm not like, I work with families that only have one child, and it's not like they suffer as a result of not having more children, but it is something that when you do have other children, we can lean into that and utilize it. Katie says, child in feeding therapy for 1.5 years and still minimal improvement in picky eating. I'm wondering, because I do hear that, is OT feeding school giving them a complex after so long? Potentially. So here's the thing. I've worked with OTs professionally, and I've also educated OTs professionally because they do work with children in picky eating, but also with other things like regulatory things and like many more things than just food. But OTs do work with children with food as well. And not all, but many, and this is more not the ones that I've trained, but the ones that parents have told me, I've worked with an OT, or I've worked with a feeding therapist. They often, not always, they often use pressuring to make children explore foods. That is going to have the opposite effect of what you want. One mum told me that I think it was OT. It was OT. Pretty sure it was OT. 90% sure it was OT. Doesn't really matter. The child had like a paint by numbers thing, and they were only allowed to advance to the next color if they licked a food. That's pressure. Sorry, that's pressure. I'm going to call that for what it is. I would not do that, because the child needs to want to do it, not be pressured by an external stimulus to do something. That's not going to give them a positive rich exposure. That's going to give them a pressured exposure. So they're doing it to get something rather than they're doing it because they actually have an intrinsic drive to want to do it. Do you see the difference? So it's possible that OT may not be super helpful for that reason. Hi, Jess. Okay, so you've got a 3-year-old who will only eat sausages, no other red meats or chicken. Okay, so my newest client, he's not eating any meat at the moment, and that is not our first point of emergency. Our first point of emergency is the amount of milk he's consuming and that he's only eating pouches. So because they've made such a, like, and I say this, they've made incredible progress in like 5 days. In fact, I've probably got a bunch of messages from them this morning I haven't looked at yet. But they've been really diligent with taking the tools from, like I said, we've had one call and it was less than a week ago, and their child has tried and explored probably 15 different foods already, which is huge. And the reason that they're able to continue making this progress in such a short time is they're able to message me every day what's going on, what worked, what didn't, so I can really get a window into what's going on. Because as I said, I'm not working with the child, I'm working with you as the parent. So if the parent can update me and say, hey, I tried playing with strawberries with them, they weren't interested. Or they were interested, this kid like put his hand in peanut butter, his finger, and like drew numbers in it. That's huge. He hasn't touched peanut butter before. This is a big deal. So whereas the day before that, he would only draw in it with a spoon. So to answer your question, getting back to the sausages and meats, meat is something, or meat and the meat alternative category are on my list of things that we are going to work on down the road. But in terms of like major emergencies or like major critical things that need working on right now, that is not one of them. We will get to that. That is definitely on there, but we need to first get him comfortable with different textures and foods that he hasn't necessarily explored before. So those are the most important things for us to work on. My OT does not use pressure at all, and still my child hasn't improved much. Okay, Katie, tell me a little bit about what techniques they have used. I'm really glad to hear they're not pressuring. That's great. How often are they seeing the OT? Because that's also something to think about. Because if they're seeing the OT once every 2 weeks, which is that's pretty good. Like not many people go once a week. It could be that it takes a long time to develop rapport with the child. And the other thing is, and this is a question for you, has the OT given you much education about how to implement what they are doing at home? This is, I find, the other shortfall of therapies that are direct with the child, is that it doesn't help you as the parent utilize those techniques at home. If the therapist sees the child once a week, or I mean, once a week would be a lot. It's usually like once every 2 weeks for an hour. That's a really small amount of time that they're having that exposure or that ability to work on the issue, the child. And like, again, when I'm telling you, like my new client, they are doing these things at every meal and snack time. And they're only able to do that because I've educated them in one session at this point. But it will be over many, many sessions. They are getting the education of what to do at every meal. And if you're working with a therapist who's only seeing your child once a week for an hour, they're only getting that exposure one hour every 2 weeks. That's very, very minimal. You need to be able to do these things daily at home. Hang on a second. I just got a notification that my live's about to end because I've been live for too long. Okay, there we go. We did weekly for several months and now we do every other week. Okay, do you think that could be part of it? Like, have you been taught what strategies to use at home? Or is it really only that they're getting that kind of, they do craft activities with non-preferred foods and explore it? Okay. Are you utilizing techniques at home, or is your child only working on these things in the therapy session? Because if they're only doing it, even once a week is a lot. Most therapies are like once every 2 weeks. If they're only working on it once every 2 weeks for an hour, that's not a lot of time. Whereas when I work with families, I'm giving them strategies to use daily. That's why they make more progress, because their child is getting more exposure to these tools and techniques. I just saw a text come in. Okay. Instagram's been super duper quiet. No one's got questions on Instagram. That's interesting. So yeah, Katie, I'm interested if you think that could be part of the reason that your child isn't making progress. Let me know what you think. Okay. This has been great. I love how you guys have been sending like questions and topics and things for us to talk about. Thank you. It is true. I do need to work with her more myself outside of therapy. The thing is, I'm not saying that it's not about blaming you. I want to be really clear on that. The reason I'm asking is because the OT ideally should be giving you things that you can do at home to continue the progress, because ideally they know, I'm seeing your child once every 2 weeks. Why is there a fly here? Seeing your child once every 2 weeks. They need this repetition at home. Here are things you can do. So what I would say is, if you're happy to continue working with the OT, ask the OT, what are things that I can do with my child at home to continue this progress, if they haven't already given you things? Or the other thing that you can do, which a lot of families who have done OT before have worked with me, even in my small coaching groups. I had a mum work with me, it was probably at the end of last year, and she told me that they'd been in feeding therapy for like a year, and that they made more progress in the 8 weeks that they worked with me than they did in that whole year. So part of that is because they are being trained in strategies to use consistently at home. So if you're happy with the OT that you have, you don't have to come and work with me. You certainly can. Feel free to send me a message. However, if you're happy with the OT, ask for tools. What can I do at home to help this continue, help this progress continue? All right, so if you have any other questions, or you want more information about the group, or you are interested in one-on-one coaching, if your kid is a bit more complex, feel free to send me a DM or like a private message on either Instagram or TikTok. I've got a question on Instagram. I can't possibly leave now. I have concerns for my son concerning no other protein but pork sausages for the last 3 years. Worries me that he might develop fatty liver disease. Oh my gosh, that is not that's not a thought we want to have with a young child. How old is your child, can I ask? And I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing you've probably tried many other different sausages or like meats over the years to help them. Is meat the only problem issue for your child? I've asked you like 6 questions there. Sorry. It's really helpful to have that kind of background, like how old is the child? How long has this been a problem? Does this extend to other areas? 5 years. Oh, happy birthday. Like happy birthday. Okay, so he's 5 years old. Is he selective in other areas as well, or is it just meat is the big problem? Very, very, very picky. Okay. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Like, it's not until you become a mum that, like, I've started saying happy birthday because it's the day that you gave birth. Like, yes, we definitely celebrating the child's being alive and being, here on the planet, but like, you birthed them. So happy birthday. I'm not sure what your name is. He also has EOE. That's an important piece of the puzzle. Okay. I'm about to get off the live. I'm not sure what your name is. The official Vibe Tribe. Can you send me a private message? I'd like to determine with you, based on your child having EOE, if that's something. You may still be a good fit for the small coaching group. It would just depend. I'd have some more questions to ask you, like what are some of the things that you've tried over the years? Have you worked with a therapist, like feeding therapy or OT before? What are some of the things that you've tried, just so that I can make sure that you are a good fit? Yeah, please PM me. I'll check my DMs. If you have any questions, as somebody who's watching, if you're interested in the small coaching group, there are only a couple of spots left. We start very soon, a little bit later this month, but only a few spots left. So if you're interested, please do send me a private message and we can chat more. All right, I'll talk to you soon, and I'll have a look for your DM. All right, good night, or bye.